Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Niki Avraam, welcome to the conversation today.
Hi, John. Great to be here.
It's a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the London area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about cultivating a leadership and ownership mindset. There's a lot of really great things to talk about around the leadership space. I like this ownership mindset idea, though, and a leadership mindset, honestly, because we all should be thinking of ourselves as leaders, whether, regardless of title, regardless of role, regardless of where we sit in the hierarchy of an organization. We all have leadership thrust upon us. We all have the opportunity to lead out in various ways and have influence within our spheres of, power and spheres of influence. And we need to take ownership, responsibility, and accountability for what we do within those spheres of influence. And so these are the types of things we're going to be exploring together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Niki's bio with everybody. Niki Avraam empowers organizations and individuals to exceed their potential by promoting a culture of ownership and adaptability. Her mission is to energize the workforce and ensure we are ready for the future of work, which is now. With years of expertise as an employment and discrimination lawyer and as founder of Howat Avraam Solicitors, she demonstrates how embracing growth beyond comfort zones, what she calls preferred discomfort, leads to unprecedented success. There's a whole lot more I could say about your background, but I'm going to pause there. Anything you would like to highlight about your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Yeah, thanks, John. And I love that you started with the leadership mindset concept. I'm completely on board. But the first thing I would say, just in relation to my legal career and how that's mapped out things for what I talk about now, the ownership culture. I've had an unconventional journey through law. So I rejected the traditional commercial law proposal job that was put to me. And I built departments. I built employment and discrimination departments in other firms. I founded my own firm because I wanted to have impact and autonomy over the way that I worked. So I call myself a work and leadership expert now, but I feel that to some degree, I've aligned my legal expertise with that expertise throughout. And that journey really is why I am compelled now to talk about the importance of the ownership culture. I've seen it in my own career. I've seen it in leading others, how you can stifle people if it's too top down, if you don't give them enough ownership, agency. And I've seen it by being in the bones of, various organizations that I've advised and I've been close to throughout my journey.
Yeah. Well, you bring up something that I think that's really, really important. So not only is it important for me to take ownership, like to take responsibility and accountability for what I do. So my own leadership, my own whatever role, whatever placement in the hierarchy, wherever I happen to be, whatever influence I happen to have, I need to take ownership, right?
Yeah.
I need to recognize that. But it's equally as important for me, with whatever sphere of influence I have, to also make sure that anyone that I work with, that works for me, quote unquote, that they also recognize and understand the ownership that they have. And that is so, so, so important in any autocratic, type of organizational system. That doesn't happen. And when people don't understand that they have that ownership themselves, when they don't have accountability, and when they don't have that kind of accountability, good things don't happen. And people, basically what ends up happening in those types of workplace environments is that people do just enough to stick around. They do just enough to not get fired, right? They're not going above and beyond. They're not trying to be creative or innovate. They're just going to do just enough so that they're skating by and they can keep their job, but they're not going to try to really stretch things. They're not going to try to take ownership or take the reins of their own careers or their own jobs, their own projects, those sorts of things. And so I need to take ownership for myself and what I do, but I also need to set that example for my team, and I need to make sure that they understand that they are empowered to take that ownership for what they do as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on something. What is the problem that the ownership culture addresses? Look at the level of disengagement,
Hmm.
apathy. I mean, in the world that we're in today, I think that that has been accelerated. We've read about
Hmm.
the great resignation post-COVID. I think that then turns into the great disengagement. And then I think and this is just reading different reports just around Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Gallup studies. Then it's been termed as the great wait. I think we're still in the great disengagement. Because if we look at some of the statistics I was looking at, a Gallup global survey that states or found that 59% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Like they are not
Yeah.
connected with their organization. They don't feel that they have that personal stake in the success and the well-being of the organization. 18% of those are highly disengaged. And that goes beyond just kind of shifting around and doing the minimal. That turns into sabotage. And that then becomes a lot more sinister. But if we
Yeah.
just look at disengagement as a whole, having control over what we do is not only important, it elicits joy. There are so many studies that have shown that. And it also leads to more deep-seated fulfillment that weathers any storm. It's not just about being happy and feeling passionate every day. So if we marry all of those things together, to look at how can we tackle disengagement, and more importantly, how can we fulfill an overall mission to be invigorated and inspired by the work that we do? Crucial that we have control over what we do, and that we are allowed to assert our identity in the workplace. And that's important in so many ways, in so many different forms, because we all have this gold dust, right? We all have our lived experience, what I call our wisdom toolbox to bring to the fore. If we are not expressing that, if the organization is not tapping into that to align the organizational goals with the passions, objectives, the strengths of the individual, look at all the gold dust and superpowers that are being missed out on. And not only that, it means that the individuals are having to mold themselves around these kind of fixed job roles and these fixed objectives without bringing their real strengths and passions to the organization. So that's why I talk about the importance of the ownership culture, and really and you touched upon this, and I love that. I love that you said that the leadership mindset effectively is not confined to what we might think or what we might define initially as a leader. We know that there's no cookie cutter, right? In terms of what defines a leader, traits, characteristics. So adopting that leadership mindset from an early stage of our careers and having organizations that recognize that and that empower us to do that is crucial. It's crucial now and for the future of work.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the Gallup studies. They come up with these global engagement reports annually, and they have for I don't even know how long, for decades, where they survey, tens of thousands of workers, and it's really sad. The number of engaged workers is so low, and it's across the world that the engagement levels are so world, and the actively disengaged, it's just so high. So like you said, it's not just people who don't like their jobs and are just kind of sitting there kind of with apathetic, but when you get to the actively disengaged people, like it's to the point where people are even sabotaging, actively, um, hurting the organization. So, I mean, we talk so much about employee experience. That's a buzzword nowadays, right? So employee engagement, employee experience. We want to make sure that our people are happy, but not just happy, but contributing in meaningful ways, finding purpose, so that not just the warm fuzzy side, but also like from a bottom line standpoint, that means they're going to be contributing, they're going to be adding value, they're going to be helping the organization move forward and add value to the market, right? They're going to help innovate and create wonderful customer experiences and great products and services and all those sorts of things. And so, we just have to be able to have more engaging workplaces and better employee experiences. And that doesn't happen when people don't have a sense of decision-making autonomy and ownership over what they do in their jobs. When they have someone breathing down their neck, someone micromanaging them, when they have some sort of authoritarian, autocratic type of boss who's a jerk, toxic boss and toxic workplace environment, it just doesn't happen. Like that worker will not be engaged. They will not be empowered. They will not take ownership over what they do. They will resort to just doing just enough, keep their head down, do just enough to try to keep their job and not be fired. And they'll do that while looking for another job, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll even look for ways to sabotage the company along the way. And so it's just utterly stupid for organizations to have that kind of an environment, to have those types of people in positions of power and authority. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's the thing is I think we all know that intellectually. It doesn't have to be that way. Yet we see that time and time again in so many organizations, in part because so many like formal leaders in roles of power tend to promote the wrong people. They tend to promote people who shouldn't be promoted into positions who then are toxic and then create those bad environments and don't empower their people. So we need to have better top down, from a hierarchical structure, we need to have better top down leadership. We also need to, have more bottom up grassroots, leadership and empower everyone everywhere, and in between, just to create these types of positive workplace cultures and environments so that everyone can thrive.
Yeah, I mean, how has it become the norm to just accept the fact that you don't really like your job, you don't feel empowered, you don't feel stimulated by it? How has that become the norm? And that's why I say it is our fundamental right to be invigorated by work. Like you say, I mean, the top-down leadership style, which I embodied years ago, back in the day, because I thought
It's
that's the
what
way I had
everyone
to
knew,
be.
right?
It's like that was the precedent set, right? And I happened to be in a male-dominated team, and I was like, I have to be perceived as strong, and all the things that you associate with a leader and a partner. I have to be assertive. I have to, I have to look powerful in essence. But when I did that, and I was like, okay, here's how we're going to fight the case, not just what I wanted the outcome to be, or here's how we're going to build the department or the business. I mean, my passion wasn't everyone else's. It doesn't just trickle down. People have to feel that they are invested. And I found that once I switched to becoming an empowerer, an enabler, a custodian of their journeys, and really started to collaborate and look at what they could bring to the table, that's when the innovation, the breakthrough work started to happen because they would carry it through. They would come up with the idea, we'd discuss it, and they would execute it because they were personally invested. And we have to look at how we can embed these principles in the entire life cycle of let's call it the employee experience. So the ownership culture, I talk about the main pillars of that because we have to break it down. If we look at just job roles, how have they been traditionally designed? The job roles written, someone comes in, great, tick, 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 you can do all of these, get started. When the question should really be, what skills do you have that the organization is not aware of? And later on down the line, that they're not utilizing. So the job crafting in itself should have that level of autonomy, that level of asserting our identity. The two should come together, aligning
Yeah.
our passion strengths with those of the organization and equipping the every individual with the tools to have and work with that autonomy. I talk about preferred discomfort because that's important for, the collective adaptability of the whole organization. And that comes from creating a have your back versus watch your back culture, a safe to fail
Mm,
culture. People feel that they can work outside of their comfort zone and intentionally pursue different experiences. Again, that's how we make great work. That leads to breakthroughs. And the agility piece, where we remain agile. And in the world that we're in the world that we're going into, how important is that? Where that sort of traditional linear approach to professional development and to work, that no longer works in the best way. We have to empower people to adapt so that they can pivot between roles, maybe even between industries going forward. That's how we build that agile workforce by enabling, empowering people to exercise that muscle. And as leaders, we need to demonstrate that through example and through cultivating that environment. It's so, so important. And I just think that if we stay in this kind of static top down, and that bleeds into the organizational structure, then we will have this kind of gap between what's happening in the world, all the technological shifts, demography shifts, and the ineptness of leaders, of their people not being equipped
hmm.
with the right tools or mindset. So the two have to come together, I think, quicker than they're coming together at the moment.
Yeah. I totally agree. Something else, I mentioned in your bio, but you have this concept, preferred discomfort, and you mentioned it just a minute ago. I would love to unpack that a little bit more. What do you mean specifically by preferred discomfort? And how does that lead to unprecedented success?
It's I define it as the intentional pursuit of experiences that push boundaries and broaden our horizons.
Mm,
Because if we're working in our comfort zone, we are not pushing, we're not innovating. And that leads to that endemic culture where you're not trying new things, you're not innovating, and people don't feel allowed to do that. I prefer discomfort when you feel that there is something invigorating, and there might be an element of fear there, but you push through. And we all know, if we really think back to a time where we thought we were like breaking convention a bit, working beyond our comfort zone, we know how that feels,
yeah.
right? At first it's that kind of knot in the stomach. And then as you push through, you kind of get that sense of invigoration, but still sort of fearful of it. You push through further and you come through to the other side. And there's that incredible sense of accomplishment. You have achieved something you didn't think perhaps you were capable of achieving. And so if we have that mindset to work outside of our comfort zone and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and if organizations support, cultivate that, it means that, that muscle is exercised, it becomes stronger. And again, for the future of work, the world we're going into, we don't know what's around the corner. It's incredibly volatile, and I think it will continue to be so. So where we can't anticipate what's coming next, we need to develop that mindset and that comfort with being uncomfortable, so that we can go into whatever challenges we are faced with that mindset. I think it's crucial for the success of any organization.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so hard, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable when, as humans, like from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, fight or flight, like we want to maintain the status quo. We don't like change. We like comfort, we like predictability, we like stability, right? So how do we learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable?
I don't think it has to be a radical act. When I think back to the different stages of discomfort in my journey and how I can kind of communicate this to others. I mean, even in our day to day, where we've got where we've got sort of micro spaces in a day,
Hmm.
where they're not so kind of structures, and we do something outside of the norm that feels a bit uncomfortable. What that does is it engages the brain and it makes us feel alive and alert, and we're present in the moment. Those are small micro discomforts, I would call them, and that's where we're engaged. My background as a lawyer, I was incredibly comfortable. It was
Hmm.
a challenging job, but I felt like a lot of the time I was one of the experts in the room. As I've come out of that and I've transitioned to talk about the ownership culture and developing our own leadership philosophy, I'm not the perennial expert anymore, right? I'm drawing from past experiences. I'm learning every day. I think I exercise that discomfort muscle every day. And it doesn't always feel safe, but it does feel invigorating. And that
Mm.
continuous learning is crucial for professional development and for people's engagement and for their progress, and therefore for the progress of any organization. And that, like I said before, I mean, that can be supported by any organization by creating those environments where people feel that they can do that, and showing any leaders showing that ability to exercise that preferred discomfort muscle.
This has just been such an amazing, wonderful conversation. We've only scratched the surface, but I note the time, and I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. Before we wrap things up, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Thank you, John. So my website is just my name, Niki with 1K, Avraam.com. So that's kind of my base. I do a lot of keynote speaking on the ownership culture, and I have a program that helps new and emerging leaders to develop a personal leadership philosophy. My main platforms, social media wise, are Instagram and LinkedIn. That's just Niki Avraam. So that's where you can find me. I mean, my final word on the topic. I have got so much to say on this. I'm entirely obsessed with this mission of
Hmm.
being invigorated at work. And I think, as I've said repeatedly, control is central to that. And the final word I would have is that, to repeat that whether we are leading a project, leading a team, leading ourselves, doesn't matter. The ownership mindset and the leadership mindset is important from university level upwards,
Hmm.
from the early stage of your career, having that leadership ownership mindset from the beginning and bringing your gold dust to work is integral.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Nikki. It's just been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Nikki can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.